Welcome to Voices of the Code. I am your host, Karl Murray, and with me, as always, is the fantastic Mr. Stephen Fox.
Oh, you're too nice, Karl, but thank you. Hello, everybody.
You're very welcome. All right, so today is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to do the announcements first instead of waiting to the end, just because I feel like people don't listen all the way to the end. Probably because I'm boring. Anyway, if you want to be on the show, email me at Karl, Karl, at karlm.dev, and we'll get you on the show. Today with us, we have Jayson Lindsley. Jayson, say hello.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. It's kind of an honor. It's my first podcast, so hopefully I don't get nervous and trip over myself too much. But yeah, it's great to be here.
Can't be any worse than me and Steven.
I was about to say, you're doing great so far, Jayson. So you guys are natural. You're natural, believe me.
I mean, this is only episode 6, so I guess we're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, Jayson, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into programming.
Yeah, I took kind of an unfamiliar path to get into programming. I describe myself as a jack of all trades, kind of a Swiss Army knife. I am involved in quite literally everything in the organization that I'm at. Stuff from dealing with like the marketing team and like the tooling and the SEO part down to like our actual cloud environment in AWS, and then doing some of the actual development work with our team here. And believe it or not, it kind of all started because I wanted to actually be doing reverse engineering. That was actually my original career path. And somehow along the way, I ended up in web dev.
I feel like you missed the mark, Jayson. I could be wrong.
Quite a bit.
Are you allowed to say what company you're working for?
Yeah, I'm working for MyOutDesk. So MyOutDesk is essentially like a virtual staffing company. So we find people worldwide, right now in the Philippines, and we find the great people that have a lot of work experience who want to work for a U.S. company remotely. And then we find great U.S. companies. We have a lot of requirements for them as well. Just so we can make these really successful matches. You can kind of think of it like a really curated like Upwork experience where we vet both sides to make sure things work, and then make really committed long-term matches. And that kind of overlaps with what I'm doing for that company in a lot of ways, just because there's a lot of stuff to fix. There's a lot of problems on the tech side. And then I also work on our productivity software and timekeeping software.
Nice.
Very nice. And where are you based out of?
The company is in Sacramento, California.
Okay. Are you in California as well or no?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Also in Sacramento.
Nice.
Like we have some people
also
who
in
are
Sacramento,
global,
okay.
But yeah, we have a guy on my team who's in Pakistan. We have 3 that are in the Philippines. So we're a little bit more distributed for the IT side.
All right. Well, I'm about to admit something. I've told Steven before, and I got some glares when I said it. I'm actually from Simi Valley, California.
From what was it again?
Simi Valley, near LA.
I'm from like NorCal originally, so yeah. I don't know anything about SoCal at all.
Oh wow!
Like,
yeah, about what is it, like 10 miles northwest of LA, like the outer rim of LA.
I've never even been to LA. I've been to LAX one time, and I got yelled at by the TSA agent, and I've just been kind of avoiding it since. So
I've never been back. One bad TSA person, and all of Cali is blown. Southern Cali.
Odd question. Did you go to Laravel or Laracon this year?
No, I actually haven't been to Laracon. I have yet to go there. I've been to a few other conferences. I've been to Dreamforce a few times because I also have Salesforce experience. But I'm hoping one day I can get to Laracon. It looks like there's a lot of people there that I recognize in the community. So I'm kind of excited to get over there.
Nice.
Nice. For sure. Yeah, you've got to get out there. It's an experience for sure.
The main
is a good
thing
time.
too is it's like I'm doing like 900 things all the time. So one of the challenges is like I'll go there and I'll see all this stuff and get FOMO. Like I really want to use Livewire, but like I don't have time, or it's like not on the boilerplate, and I'll just like kind of start making excuses in my head, like, hey, they're working on this really cool thing. I need to make an excuse to use it. Like, where can I fit this in, even if it doesn't make sense? So I kind of end up with this issue of like stop building cool stuff because like I'm too busy to use it.
Mm-hmm. That could be a deadly trap for us developers, because then you just like want to keep jumping on these new trains and you're just constantly going down these rabbit holes of new technologies.
It's probably healthier than chasing every JavaScript framework though.
There's a website for that if you're curious. It's the amount of new JavaScript or days since last JS, something like days since last JS framework.com or something like that. And I'm convinced it's hard coded to 0.
They should set it to -1 and just so they're future proof forever.
Yeah. For the C guys of the listening to the podcast, that would be an overflow.
I saw that meme for like, since I'm working on timekeeping software too, I have the pleasure of working with time zones, and so I saw a meme where it's like days since last time zone issue, and it was set to -1. It was like a post-it note, and I was like, that is absolutely too true. I loathe the time zones. It gets so confusing so quickly.
So the Primogen posted a video not so long ago on YouTube where he was talking about like why time zones are such a nightmare. And one of them was like, this island decided that it wanted to be part of that time zone. So no matter what, it's going to jet into the other time zone so that the entire island is considered that time zone. And it's like, but everything south of that island is a completely different time zone. It's like, but it's directly south. We don't care. It's directly south.
Yeah, I could honestly, I could spend hours talking about all the stuff that we've ran into with time zones. It's horrible. But it's kind of
Stay
necessary
away from Indiana.
evil.
Just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody posted a GitHub repository for this, and it's why Indiana's time zones are so messed up. And it's like every law that was put on the books because they do it county by county. The county can choose what time zone they belong to. It's like that doesn't make any sense.
I feel for the standard library authors.
I have one little tidbit on time zones. I'll jump in here really quick to mention that bit me. Maybe it'll help somebody. I was recently doing something and it was seeding data into a MySQL database. And it kept telling me this date is an invalid date time, so it wouldn't insert the record. And I'm looking at them like, that looks like a perfectly formatted date time when the world is going on. And after too much time trying to figure out what the heck was going on, it was because it was a not a leap day. It was a time change day. So we were like springing forward for a daytime savings or daylight savings. And so it was at like, March day at 2:08 a.m., which
never
is when
exists.
the time goes forward, which technically never exists. And I'm like, oh, MySQL, you're killing me. So you just have to like go in and tell MySQL to, I don't know, default to using UTC daylight savings protocol, and then it will dump it in. But it was just like, for the longest time, I was like, why does it not accept this stupid record? It was like
all the crazy things we run into as developers, like adding an extra comma to a CSV file will completely wreck your day.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, yeah, you see programmers, you think buffer overflows are hard. Try daylight savings in a MySQL database.
I just have a universal rule, always UTC. Just save your life. It's always use UTC.
I have some caution against that, though.
Oh, here we go.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so let's talk about scheduling, and maybe I just haven't stumbled upon the solution, but we've been looking at this for a couple of years now. But I want you to think about if you were to take a time zone that is going to be like in America, Los Angeles, right? So you work at America, Los Angeles from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., no matter like what day. It's always like Monday through Friday. That's the standard schedule. Okay. If you put that in the database, you're going to have a problem with 5 p.m., which is because it's going to be 0, 0. And then what's going to happen is daylight savings is going to come around and it's going to bump that value. And so what you're going to kind of end up with is this case where you need to know, either you're going to have to know where you're at, or you're going to have to move those UTC timestamps when daylight savings occurs, or else that 8 a.m. is going to get bumped and so's 5.
So the way that I've solved that problem is I just use JavaScript to figure out what time zone they're in and bump it forward or minus based off of their time zone that they're in.
Yeah, if you're forwarding in the future, it gets really bad. Like if you're projecting that, right? Because if you're doing it on the PHP side and you're saying, okay, I want to use this schedule and I want to, get this entire month on the calendar, and you're going to generate it ahead of time, it causes some really like gross logic on that side when you're trying to figure out like, okay, we weren't in DST for this day, but then we are now in this day. And it's not a problem that I've found to elegantly solve unless you actually just code it in the target time zone in the database, in which case then I wouldn't recommend using UTC. I would just say, if it's always 8 a.m., like leave it at 8 a.m. and put the standard time zone in another column, or else you're going to probably cause headaches for not necessarily the viewer, right? Because you could put it back into UTC like when you send it down to the browser if you want to use their local library. But for the back end, it's just been wrecking havoc on us for so long that we're like, we cannot do this again. Like next time, we're just going to leave it in the time zone.
Yeah, previous job, I used to do a lot with the GDS and stuff like that. So it would deal with a special character being put in the database if it crossed a day. So if, like, you were getting on a 2-hour flight at 11 p.m., you would cross the day, so it would put a special character in, letting you know that you are landing a different day than the day you took off in. Which gets to be really fun when you're trying to solve that problem.
Yeah.
But we found that just putting it in UTC and then pulling it, running a JavaScript to figure out where and when they will be landing ends up making a lot more sense. So we just query the user every single time they log in and say, hey, look, they're in this time zone now. Save that in the database and then give them all times based on that time that they're currently in, unless specified otherwise.
So fun. So, Jayson, you have fun with time zones at the job. Is there any other challenges that you face that you want to throw out there for us to talk about? That come to mind.
Too many for right now. I kind of want to circle back to what got into programming, right? To kind of bring it back, which we got really sidetracked. That's probably my bad. For the audience, I have ADHD, so I sometimes get derailed and I have to like bring myself back. So I want to go back to that because I have like a really interesting path where, as we mentioned earlier, I wanted to do reverse engineering, and that didn't happen. But I wanted to go back to like me breaking my first computer because that's what really started everything.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Take us to the beginning.
I was really poor growing up, and so in middle school, I became really good friends with like the security guard. There was like a retired naval officer, security guard, who worked at the middle school, and since I got dropped off early, I would just hang out with him and just talk. He ended up giving me my first computer because he had an extra one. And so I got that. It was a Windows 95. And I was like, oh, this is legit. Like I got my first computer. It's mine. Set it up at home. And I was able to finally play stuff like Warcraft 2 Battle.net Edition, StarCraft, and we had dial-up internet. So everything was awesome. Then one day my mom took me to Circuit City and I saw Red Alert 2. And I was like, oh, I want to play that. Like, that looks awesome. Same thing, top down. It's what everybody else is using. And I was the kind of person that would go through every menu. So I would just learn. I was like sitting there and I would go through every menu. I would hit every button. I would change the color on the monitor and be like, why does this look wrong now? And it's like, oh, okay, because I changed that to like to 256 colors instead of 32-bit. I was just clicking stuff. Didn't matter. But I got good at least going, okay, I know how much RAM this has. I know how fast it is. So I went to go install the game. I'm like, that's weird. There's not enough hard drive space. I already clicked around enough to know, like, okay, well, if I go to properties on the folder, I know how much space stuff takes. So I was like, all right, bet. I'll just start deleting stuff. So I started deleting stuff from the System32 folder, like the driver folder in particular. And I did get it to install, but then when I rebooted, I lost sound and internet. And
that's it? That's actually pretty good.
Well, everything else was in use, right? So it wouldn't let you. So I was like, hey, we're using this right now. You can't delete that. And I was like, try again. I was like, all right, well, that's not good. So whatever, skip. But
that's like telling Linux users to remove the French language pack.
It was interesting because that's exactly how I learned what drivers do. I was like, oh, no, I shouldn't have done that. And my mom was a little bit upset. But what was also interesting is at that school as well, I was there was the computer guy was going around upgrading all the computers from Windows 95 to Windows 98. And I was like, hey, I could that would totally be good for me too. So I don't know. I was talking to him and he just handed me the stuff to do it. And he's like, hey, just bring it back. I'm like, heck yeah. So I went. So I managed to get the computer from a broken soundless 95 to a 98. The modem still didn't work though, because it was like aftermarket or something. But at least I got that part working. And then my mom ended up getting a loaner computer from her work, which I also broke, but we'll get to that later. All this is kind of important staging. That one I broke because at the time I was like I started learning about like torrents and stuff like that. And, at the time, we would open up uTorrent. It'd be like, hey, we could make this download faster if you let us, adjust how many TCP connections you have open. And I was like, that sounds perfect. And I hit yes. And then it corrupted the
we don't let
WinSock
Jayson
stacks.
test and prod.
Right. So, I was like, okay, whatever. So then I broke that. And then, that knowledge though about like what the WinSock stacks, the TCP/IP stacks does in Windows and fixing that, that actually got me my first job, computer repair. I've only ever had 2 interviews, by the way. So I've never had to actually go look for. I just don't look for jobs; they kind of just show up. But I was working at an ice cream shop.
Must be nice living in California.
It's weird. I was working at an ice cream shop, and I just kind of sent off my resume to this computer repair place, and I happened to have broken my own computer enough to get a job there. So that is basically where the reverse engineering started.
You heard here, folks. Just leave a wake of destruction behind you, and it'll eventually lead you into a career path of development.
Yeah, basically.
He's not wrong. I mean, that's how I got started, was like trading computer parts around. So, hey, you need a hard drive. I need a video card. Here's a 20 gig hard drive. Can you give me that, stupid cheap video card that will at least make my computer boot? Yeah, perfect. Good swap.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's weird too, because I just was like, okay, all this stuff that I did manage to break, I got a lot of it fixed. And then it landed me my first job at that computer repair place. And I was, technically second. I don't really count Baskin Robbins. I mean, that's ice cream. That's weird. But I became quickly like the guy. They're like, if it's a broken computer and you guys can't fix it, it goes to Jay. If he can't fix it, it's dead. Like, there's no hope.
Yeah.
And I was going to college at the same time for my computer science degree. So I was doing that. I was getting better at that. I had like Windows VMs on the side. And so people would do stuff like run registry cleaners, which, by the way, don't do that. Orphan keys can't hurt you. they're fine. Just leave them. I don't even know how they determine they're orphan, but I've seen like so much like important information just get destroyed because of registry cleaners. Like all of the like at C Cleaner and Glare utilities were like the big ones. They'll just go delete it, and you're just sitting there like, yo, like I can't open anything anymore because it deleted like several keys responsible to tell Windows how to open an exe. Like all the handlers are gone. So during that though, I rebuilt the tool that they were using for like deploying software, like Windows Defender, Malwarebytes, all that fun stuff. I built that in C#, and during like that, I was also collecting malware samples because people were coming with like all kinds of fun stuff, and I was like, how does this work? So I was just pulling it in and ripping it apart. I had a copy of Ollie Debugger and IDA Pro, and I was just like learning assembly, C, pulling these things apart, and eventually they were like, hey, we'll pay you $4 an hour more if you work on our CRM because it's falling apart. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And that's how I started PHP. And I straight up, I will be for real though, like going from C# to PHP and having nobody to tell you how it works. I did not get it at first. I was lost. I was like, how on earth does this control? How do you put in a URL and get to a controller? Nobody was there to explain this to me. And I was like, where, how, like what, how did, it was Kohana. So I'm like sitting here like, what, how does this even do anything? And it was like ridiculous.
Magic methods will kill you every time.
I that too. I was like, what are these where are the classes? Where is everything? Everything was just shoved in a controller or in a model. And I was like, what on earth? So I made it a point when, because I'm in like director seat now. So I made a point, if I'm ever bringing anybody in who's not used PHP, I'm going to like go over how a framework works with you first. Because no one tells you, it does not make sense. You're just like, there's an index file and then black magic, and then somehow some request ends up in a place, and you just have to kind of know what the method name should be.
And
that
not
was
to mention that the stack to calling that index file isn't the simplest thing, right? There's not like a binary that just is running on the server, right? You have to have
right
an actual server engine calling FPM and doing all of this other stuff too, just to get a process to execute the file. So yeah, pretty complicated.
And like, I think cPanel was like the GOAT, like when I like first started. So everybody was running cPanel. I was like, what does this even do? This doesn't make sense. So I had to like start from like the ground up. I'm like, okay, so this is Nginx, and I need this to go to PHP FPM for God knows. But then there's Apache and Apache. I don't know. The whole thing was horrible. But it eventually started to click. And then I learned I hated Kohana, and I hate I hate having route like anything parameterized where I'm like trying to guess where it goes. That's one of the things I love about Laravel. Is you just pick your route names and you're good. You tell it where to go, it'll figure it out. And I'm just like, thank God, because like you'll make something really nice. You'll be like, I want it to be this. I want to have this specific name and this specific controller, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to call that. You have to make it ugly, so that way I know where to find it. That's how I felt with Kohana and Yi and all these other ones. It was just like, no, I'm good. So that's kind of the on ramp to like how that all happened was pretty much me breaking my computer, all that fun stuff, and then finally we end up in PHP, and I promptly stopped doing any reverse engineering. I got rid of my malware analysis book. I deleted my pirated copy of IDA Pro. And I haven't really touched anything like that since. So, but I also haven't broken my computer since. So we're good. It all evens out.
So if you are somehow listening to this podcast and you're not into tech already, here's the key takeaway.
What are you doing if you're listening to this podcast and you're not in tech already?
Irrelevant. Maybe they're interested in tech and want to get into it eventually. But let's say, for example, you're not here yet. The tip here is break it, learn how to fix it, and then put that on your resume.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's a very, very valid path. But, I have a feeling it's not what a lot of people do. And I can't say I recommend it if you don't have a lot of money, because my mom was very mad at me breaking those things.
Well, I would say start up a Linux VM, break the hell out of it, like literally break it, and force yourself to learn how to fix it. Do not just wipe the OS and start over. And you will go so far in the web world.
Yeah. Luckily, we have a lot of really cheap computational devices these days. So if you really want to
DigitalOcean's $5 a month.
Well, yeah, or even just like the Raspberry Pi and the Arduinos and stuff like that. Like some of the really big light bulb moments I had on my educational venture, and this would have been 15, 20 years ago, was, getting some of the first Arduino stuff and understanding that, I can write code here that eventually will get, this switch to engage, which will send voltage out this little serial port thing. And then like a physical something happens. And at the end of the day, like that's what computers do, right?
Right.
It's just a really cool way to discover how a lot of these little pieces come together. I think it's a lot of the engineer's mindset too. It's like people that are really good engineers, they are just intrinsically curious about how things work. Yeah. And so wanting to take them apart and put them back together, whether that's physically, digitally, it's just a common thread between a lot of engineers, I think, regardless even of discipline. Because like I was a mechanical engineer originally, and it was much the same way. It was everything from like building cars and engines, and my mom has hilarious stories of me taking apart the toilets in the house and putting them back together. It's just you just want to know how stuff works, and there you go. And maybe one day it'll lead you somewhere. So
yeah, that's how I feel about like malware too. When I was really into that, a lot of that stuff was just like, how are they doing this? Because I was instructing the other people about how to remove very specific, like, not a lot in the way of rootkits, because those were particularly dangerous. But I do remember like going through and actually grabbing a hard drive that had a rootkit on it, looking what it did to the MBR. Like TDSS was like the popular rootkit at the time. And
you're saying a lot of stuff I don't know about, Jayson.
Yeah, sorry about that.
MBR.
Yeah,
MBR master boot record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a lot of like Windows internals. I really wanted to understand how exactly all that stuff was put together, and importantly, like these pieces of malware at the time were writing things to like registry keys that you wouldn't think were even in use, that would like jump through hoops. There was things like droppers that would have a whole installation process that were encrypted. It was just a lot of fun, but it's the same thing. Like I just wanted to understand how are these working, and how can I advise everybody else about how to safely eject them from the system without having to run big tools that potentially put that system in danger. Because some of these would take such a heavy-handed approach, like, oh, it's bad, delete it. Well, if it's registered as a driver and you just delete it, Windows won't boot. So a lot of it was fielding stuff like that too, and making sure that like, hey guys, for this one right now, don't do that, or else that machine won't boot, and then that's a whole other different problem.
Lesson learned by using CrowdStrike.
Yeah, that's I was surprised that Windows doesn't have like a rollback for like drivers after that. Kind of a weird one, considering. I don't know.
I'm just surprised it hasn't happened to Apple yet. That level of, well, I guess Apple doesn't really let you get that low level.
That is true.
Like
yeah.
If you're going to affect the boot up process of a Mac, I don't think Apple lets you in there.
Yeah, I think they recently announced too, Microsoft at least, that they're probably going to try to get those AVs out of the kernel anyway. So I think we'll probably see that stop being an issue in the future.
I thought they said something about switching to a Linux kernel going forward, because they were noticing something about WSL and how much more efficient it was being. But I could be very wrong on that.
I'm not sure. I'll have to check. Was it Tom Warren? His tweets.
Or look, I need to watch more low-level learning. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I don't do much of that stuff anymore, if at all.
Good
so
show.
I'm
That's a
kind
good
of out
show.
of the loop.
Fair enough.
So, Jayson, has much of this like kind of hacky, break things, security concerns, has that translated a lot into your present day-to-day? Like, do you find yourself, I don't want to say gravitating towards, but like being able to identify some of these threats for your company and the application better because of it?
So, to simplify Steven's question, because of your past experience, does it help you with your current experience?
Yeah, I mean, really, I guess the
but in a
mindset
specific way.
Yeah, the mindset of just looking about how things work has been a little bit helpful. I'd say it's been more helpful for debugging than anything. Like, I can look at an app. It doesn't even matter if I've developed it, right? You can run into an issue in a web app that you're working with, and you can just go, oh, I guess I see kind of why that's probably happening. Maybe that'll help me get to a resolution faster. But more so for, my current position, a lot of that stuff is mostly, I think, just curiosity and problem solving. I have like a lot of experience doing a lot of different stuff, and I think that's just kind of like who I am. So when it comes down to like learning how things work, whether it's going to be like, Google's knowledge graph, all the way into just, what's going on in AWS, I'd say that's the real benefit there. Yeah, I'd say it's more about how I approach just the problem solving experience, but
Right.
also because I'm sort of a jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife, I can do a lot of different stuff in a lot of different areas. So right now, that's kind of why I'm in that director seat. Is I'll field requests and I'll know immediately like where to send them, or if they're stuck, like that's where I'll jump in myself.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Cool.
What editor are you using if you're still writing code? Yeah, no.
Conversation left turn.
Yeah, that's a random question. I use a lot of different ones. Depends what I'm doing. I use PHP Storm for obviously for most stuff, since I am using Laravel. So we have a couple different applications in production right now. We have Yi, which is old, and we're trying to get it to Laravel. We just have kind of a bandwidth problem. We haven't had time to dedicate to doing that port yet. And then we have like an integration server that kind of floats out in the ether and just handles a lot of interoperability stuff. We have a lot of systems that are all talking to each other, and that's kind of like the Goliath that's sitting out there. Its only job is to route stuff around between endpoints, whether it's going to be webhooks or from like a bunch of different services, or if it's going to have like some sort of purpose with handling like our like billing operations. It does a little bit of everything, and that is built on Laravel. And it's been just an absolute pleasure to work on, which is why I love Laravel, because it's fast. If I need to get something up, if I need to get a webhook endpoint up, I know that I can just drop it through there. So for the other stuff I'm doing, like if it's anything like Lambda related, I'm going to drop that into VS Code. So I also do Rust over in VS Code. I was using Rust Rover for a little bit, but because we have a Tauri app that is currently in use, and I know not a lot of people have shipped like Tauri 2 to production. We're ramping up on Tauri 2 right now, which is really exciting. So for anything Rust, I just automatically defer to VS Code. So those are my two choices. I was never big on Vim. I don't know if I got there late, but I was just like, like I need an IDE. Like I prefer that.
Well, that's currently in this episode. I'm just kidding. Sorry. Steven and I are both Vim users, so of course we have to,
well,
get that in
we're
there.
Vim motion users. We're not
enough.
actual Vim users. There's a very big
Fair enough.
difference.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I just was never really, I don't know. It never really took off for me. at least in that way. I do have to use it on occasion, right? Like if you're SSH into something and you have to do something really sketchy. Like one time we broke production. I'll give you an example. We accidentally DDoS'd ourselves. My colleague had deployed
brilliant.
some code that was, when you were like on a dashboard, it had an interval, and then that interval would basically call home every so often. And he accidentally forgot a 0. So what happened is, if we have 2,000 users, and they all kind of show up for work about the same time. So like every like 50 seconds, the server would just get dogpiled by like 2,000 requests in bursts at the same time. And so that was a case where I was like, oh, and that endpoint wasn't super light either. So I was at the Ring Central conference, I think in 2017, and I had to go in, and I was like, okay, hold on. So I had to whitelist my IP so I could get to the jump hosts. That way I could go into production, so I could just add like an early die statement somewhere, just that way we could get the fleet back under control. Because like it was in Elastic Beanstalk at the time, and you could always scale up. But one of the issues is I inherited the app that I'm talking about from a Russian company called like Magora, and they've never heard of indexes in their life. They've never like heard of like any. It was like I was like, oh my god! Like every time we solved a problem, the load would move. So if you kind of think about like, okay, we had at the time when that service was first up, it had 5 servers running, and it was costing like $5,000 a month to keep this thing running in AWS. I got that down to like $400. So the first thing was like the problem was on the PHP side, right? So it would basically be in this big loop to build schedules forever, and it would take too much time. So like, all right, well, I'll start there. I optimized that. Literally all of the load moved on to the database. So now every server was just sitting there with waiting because it couldn't get data from the database fast enough. So then I had to go fix the database. But then we had another problem where then we moved the load back to the servers now. And then we're like, okay, we need cache. We need Redis in here. And so we kind of, it's been like a work in progress to kind of, because when you don't do it right the first time and you kind of inherit those products, I just assumed that like some of this stuff would have been, it was already running in production. So I was like, okay, like we'll tackle this one at a time. I didn't think to like go through and meticulously audit each table and figure out where you're potentially shooting yourself in the foot. But yeah, it was a weird one. So yeah, to circle back. That's when I use stuff like V or Vim or Nano, is specifically if I'm in an SSH environment.
Right. At least as long as you know how to get out of it, right? colon WQ, then you know that you're fine.
The harder part is when you forget the
still
sudo.
Stuck in the session.
You forget the sudo, then you W. It's like, yeah, I can't write that, bro. And I was like, oh my god, like, I have to go through all this again. I got to call my colleague over. I'm like, okay, what's the 15 hotkeys I need to change this line? He's like a wizard in there. That's like his thing. He has, I swear, you could just take away his mouse, he'd be fine. He doesn't need it.
A Vim
That's
wizard.
the dream.
Yeah,
That's the dream.
I'm not that good. I'm not that good.
I'm getting close, but still nowhere near.
Yeah.
Nowhere near.
I can do some of that stuff, but it takes me longer to remember and actually get it like written out correctly with my keyboard. It's just faster for me to
Steven
touch my
uses
mouse
J.
at that moment.
Steven will grab his mouse instead of hitting J 17 times or hitting 17J.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like you get to a line and it's like, can't remember how to like get to exactly where I want to be in this line, and so it's just www.
F and then the letter that you're looking for. There you go. That's
Then
always
half
fun.
the time I'll do that and I won't realize that the letter I'm going for occurs earlier in the line, and my brain will be going too fast. So I'll just like F where I'm trying to go, CIW to start changing the word I'm in, but then I realize my cursor's at the wrong location in the line, and so then I'm like, crap. Then I have to escape, go out and undo, and then actually get to where I want to be. I'm like, damn it, I'm trying to be fast, and it's just making me go in circles.
Ugh. Yeah,
Yep.
it gets you.
The life of
that
a
kind of
Vim
stuff.
user.
Yep. So I guess Jayson dodged a bullet on that one. At least he doesn't get stuck in BIM circles.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
yeah, for sure. Sticking with the browser or the editor stuff, tab spaces, light mode, dark mode. What are we using?
I just use. I think the default it goes to spaces. But I've never really stopped to consider that, to be honest. Because whenever I'm in any of my editors, it's like, hey, we're just converting tabs to spaces for you, and I'm like, all right, cool. I literally never paid attention. I've
That
seen
is
the
a
memes,
great
but
thing.
yeah,
That is great for the memes, but not really an argument to have in 2024 going into 2025. Just use a linter.
yeah.
Every
I mean,
language now has a linter of some sort.
I don't think I've ever been in an editor where it used an actual tab though. So it's weird to me. I don't maybe I missed it or something, like maybe I just was lucky. But I've never ran into a file I think that had actual tabs instead of spaces. So
I think you'll only run into that kind of problem if you're dealing with a language that is white space. This is the term I'm looking for. I don't remember, but Python, for example, where if you mix the tabs into space, you're going to run into a world of hurt. Um, but like most modern languages don't do it anyway, so who cares?
Right.
Light or dark
Right.
mode?
it mostly dark mode. I
I feel like
think
there's a case for switching to light. Here we go.
I'm trying to think. Like, do I? It's like some apps. Okay, so some apps I prefer to be light mode. But my editor's almost 100% dark mode.
So the only time I ever switch to a light mode is if I'm editing something that's in light mode. So I do a lot of like switching back and forth between light and dark because I'm doing like front end stuff. And it's like, hey, what does this look like if I'm using light? And then I'll switch my editor to light so I don't like go with that jarring experience of like, hey, my screen is dark. And I switch back to the browser and it's now bright. I'd rather it be universally bright and universally dark.
Yeah. How?
Yeah, that makes sense.
For it's interesting that you mentioned front end. So for both of you, what is your preferred front end stack? I kind of am interested because we're on the other side of building a chat feature in Vue, and I've kind of ran into the issues that I have with that framework's reactivity, and it's been biting us for a little bit, and it's a thing I thought I would never run into. So I'm kind of curious what you guys what you're using. Are you React people or?
The interviewee interviews the interviewers.
Dude, this is great. I love this.
So I'm built and tall. So Vue, Inertia, Tailwind, and Laravel, and obviously tall. So Tailwind, Alpine, Laravel, Livewire.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same, but it depends a lot on the specific needs. And so like present day, if I'm doing something that's not extremely front end interactive, I will reach for tall. I just really like the way of doing things with Livewire. It's really fast.
I'm going to throw a wrench in that. I don't really think that you have to have Vue in 2024. I know, hot take, but most of what you want to do is available using Alpine and Livewire.
Yeah. I mean, it is all just JavaScript at the end of the day.
Correct.
It's about how easy it is to get the JavaScript into the browser.
Correct. If you do not like writing JavaScript, tall is the best way to go because then you don't have to write JavaScript 95% of the time.
Yeah. There are some situations that I have done some pretty complicated things with Alpine.
But you throw that in a component. You throw that in a component and you never look at it again.
Well,
until it's time to debug it.
As you're writing it, you're just kind of thinking like, okay, man, yeah, this is one of those times where some of the additional features that Vue or React provide would make this a little bit easier. But yeah, so I had done a decent amount of Vue stuff and I didn't really know React for quite a while, until about maybe a year ago or so. And then I've been dabbling into it a little bit more. And one of the few things that I find myself liking about it, and it's so incredibly simple, but it's getting out of the single file component convention and being able to have either a page or a kind of like bigger component that's main feature set requires some very coupled and connected child components, and then being able to have all of those in the same file, just like nice locality of concern.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see this a lot when it's like, I have a component that is the list wrapper for whatever you actually want to put onto the screen. And then each one of the list items is also its own component. And so just this simplicity of having the wrapper and each little item right there next to each other, they can share some functions that are in the same file and stuff like that. I do like that part of React, but at the same time, I will 100% admit I am much more of a back-end guy these days than a front end. So I don't think I'm even qualified to answer that question for really front-end heavy applications anymore.
All right, I'm going to have to ask this question because people are going to want to know, what issue did you run into Vue's reactivity that you never thought you'd run into?
So
what's going on there?
Okay, so we're talking about Tauri, right? I guess we could start with like the motivation for even moving to Tauri was like app size. So Electron we took a C# app and an Objective-C app, and we moved it over to Electron because I was like, we can't manage two different code bases. Also, I don't do Objective-C. I don't understand it. It's ugly. It's weird to me. I'm sorry for anybody who loves it like that. They get up in their day. They get, I get to write Objective-C today. I'm so happy. I don't understand you. It is awful. I can't do this. I can't work on this. So I got, so me and my colleague, we were like, okay, let's go to Electron. And then we quickly ran into this IPC main. If you want to do AC, you have another window floating around somewhere, or else your app will like freeze your main thread and cause issues. Right? Like that's like the thing with Electron apps. In addition to the size, is it's really hard to do async stuff if you have like a bigger load on the background. And we weren't really liking that. So we went to Tauri, and Tauri is like, I'm super comfortable with that. I don't mind Rust. I picked up a couple books on Rust, and we love it. And with like this latest iteration of our app, we're like, well, now our executable is for installing is only 8 megabytes. And in addition to that, like we can have our front end completely separate. Let's address some other pain points with this, which one of them was like communication with like this distributed workforce that we have. So like, let's build chat. So we decided to grab PubNub and start building chat in there. And that is where we started kind of running into this issue of the reactivity system and the problem of like rendering a ton of components on the screen at the same time. And we were using Discord as kind of our North Star for where we want to be performance-wise. And it is not easy. Things that we just didn't think about that would cause re-renders. Because like it's like hard to like go, okay, this is like a piece of data that needs to be here, but I don't want to like observe it. And we have Pina for like the store of this thing. And then just depending on like what we're doing, we were just causing like excessive amounts of re-renders. Then we tried using like, and this is a big caveat with Tauri, for listeners. Make sure that you know how your app is going to behave in WebKit. Like you're going to need to understand when you deploy to Mac, you're going to be using that. So a lot of the tricks that you may use for like a chat experience, like keeping the chat window stuck to the bottom when you insert a new component, is not like super simple. For like your Chromium Edge-based browsers, there's like some tricks you can use, and it's like a one-liner, and you're good. It's just a lot harder with Chromium. But what we ran into was like excessive re-renders because we're touching things we shouldn't be doing. A lot of stuff where the Vue libraries are have like behavior that is just simply like not geared toward performance. Like we had a component library, and I think I tweeted this, that I think it was a mistake to use a component library because it would mutate like some style variable up in the DOM somewhere else, right? So because that was happening, it would reflow the whole layout. And so when you were scrolling up and down, your memory usage would go from like 120 megs to like 700 on WebKit. And we just kept running into all these problems. And so one of the things I kept going back as I was looking at React, I'm like, man, like I just wish this would behave a little bit, because like the React I have done, I found myself really wanting some of those things for this, which is like only thing that will cause under very specific re-render scenarios. Like if I update part of like an element or something like that with Vue, it would like redraw the whole tree, right? There's some cases where like I wanted something that would be like reactive by itself, but like not necessarily cause that behavior. And so we've had to go through like this crazy optimization for the past month where we've just been digging up everything that we could think of to try and make this thing performant. And we're kind of finally there after a lot of pain, and building our own custom like scrolling component and all these other things that we had to go through. Whereas like some of that stuff's just available in React because the ecosystem's so rich. Like you would just have that available in like a way that you'd be like, oh, like that's already there. Or maybe, you know, like everybody else, just pick Shad CN and just move on with your life for all those components. And then you kind of know it's like, okay, it'll be performant and I don't have to worry about it. There's a lot of friction with that. So that was really the main one, is like just really tracking down those redraws. And then two, I saw somebody on Twitter made something specifically for React called like React Scan that will actually look for those re-renders for you as like a plugin for your browser. And I was like, I need that. Like that would have been so helpful a while ago, because instead we had to go through the Vue lifecycle and we had to add like and there is a hook for when it re-renders, right? But you have to add that to every single component. So we ended up having to go do that and figure out where are we incurring costs that are, you know, that are making this CPU usage and this RAM usage happen. So it's been a learning experience. But this fleet's going good. So we're ramping up to our 2,500 users globally right now, which is awesome.
Dang.
That is awesome.
I got two questions there. One, how many components are you talking about on like a page that are rendering?
You want me to start with that one?
Ballpark.
Well, okay. Think about a chat app. You scroll up, you want to see it, right? Say you have 100 messages, you have at least 100 parent components storing those messages. If you hover over those, depending on how you're doing it, you also have 100 message options. Then if you think about like the avatar, like avatar would be a component, like the actual text, which will take the markdown coming from your chat. Like ours is built on PubNub, right? So they'll have like a markdown version of that. Or if you want to send like, there are other types you could do. I forget what it's called for like TipTap, but it can consume like a JavaScript or JSON that looks like HTML and turn it back and forth. There's that. And also too, people want to scroll up and down. So if you look at Discord, right, you can go through hundreds of messages and everything is like great and it's still performant. But you're still, at the end of the day, we're talking like 500 components, like unless you're very careful about what you actually put there. And we didn't really pay attention to that when we first started. This issue kind of came about later. And then there's also issues with WebKit where, so you want to put it in a virtual scroller, right? That would make sense because you don't necessarily need to render stuff that you're not showing in the DOM. So you kind of want to take those off, but you need to do that in a performant way while still retaining their size. And It turns out if you do that in Safari or like WebKit, if you just keep adding images and removing images, it actually slowly leaks memory as well. So that's something else you have to keep in mind is how you're doing that. Maybe put it in like a canvas. So all of that stuff
actually
like
makes sense
matters a
about
lot. And it was kind of a crazy experiment to go through this. And then two, if you change chat channels, you're taking all those old messages off the stack and putting on new ones too. So even if that channel was like performing after it loaded, you still have to be able to swap those out quickly. So there's a ton of challenges with that. And it's honestly been kind of a pain. But that's the answer to your first question. Is there, depending on how you're building it, there can be a lot.
Interesting.
Well, thanks for that insight for my upcoming projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know like how does like Discord or I mean they're I'm guessing native, not actual like Tauri, but I don't. Do you know how any apps are doing this that are effective? Like, do you just have to go native and then solve the problem that way, or what?
Well, Discord is React, so
okay,
they're just clever, and that's kind of what we had to do. We had to be clever. So, simple things like an emoji panel, you have to use like a sprite sheet, and you have to use one. So you're gonna want to move around the same one in like another layer. That's what we ended up doing was any hovering pop-up anywhere.
Oh, man.
It's just one. And we had to manually position it because we had tip tap doing it at first, and then turns out that just keeps adding tip taps to the DOM forever. Or like not tip tap, but like tippy, I think it was. So we had to do custom for all of that stuff. But it's good now. But I do wish that like they in like the licenses area for Discord, they list all the stuff that they use. And so we could have just gone and looked at that from the, then if we had React, you could have looked for, how they're doing it and been like, oh, that is a good idea. Because this is an internal tool. It's not like we're trying to, ship this out to people. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my second question, which is, did this actually have to get built? Why not just use something off the shelf?
So it's about like the expense of like bringing in those other things. So we have this desktop productivity app, and this is where it's connected to. So the app has kind of two purposes. The first one is going to be that you're required to like run it, and it's a very light sort of like making sure that you're there. We're not doing anything heavy. If you look at all these other productivity apps that are out in the marketplace, they're basically spyware. We don't do that. And we also try to keep a very low footprint for resources. And if you look at like Slack or something like that, we're talking like at the scale of 2,500 people, like thousands of dollars of spend for something that is not super like it's not something that they use all the time. It is a tool for
it's not mission critical.
It's not like a $10,000 problem per month, like, and that's what these tools would end up being at that scale. Is very, very expensive. And so we're like, well, we already require them to run this tool that we built, so let's just add chat on top of it. And PubNub has a chat like library already. It's just when we're working with the channel sizes that we're in and with the amount of people that we're in, you have to take some alternative paths to kind of get to the same spot. Theirs is more like, like best case scenario pitch. It's kind of like when you're looking at a Hello World tutorial and you're like, this is great. You just run it and you're off to the races. Just drop this in and everything's awesome. When you start doing things for 2,000 people though, like all of that just breaks down and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, that's always a fun game to play.
Gotcha. Out of curiosity, well, whatever. I'm just gonna ask anyway. We can.
Yeah, go for it.
What have you seen? Have you seen the new campfire thing that like once 37 Signals has put out, which is like a pay once, self-hosted, very trimmed down Slack?
I did look at that, actually. That was like one of the things I was actually going to use first. But some of the reviews on Reddit were not great. And that's kind of what dissuaded me from doing it that way. Another thing too is like having our people have to run 2 apps was a hard sell. We need to be out of the way because they have, so the way that like our model works, right, is they're going to be working for like a company in the US. So this is just for like us organizationally to be able to reach them, to communicate with them, to make them feel like part of like this bigger like ecosystem and this team. And so we don't want to be like, hey, in addition to you running Microsoft Teams for your client, also launch the app that we have so you can log in and start your shift. And then also, by the way, also launch this chat app. Like, it's just like, it doesn't really feel good for them.
Right.
And not only that, like we're saving a ton of money, right? So if we just compare like baseline costs of just having this on PubNub ourselves, because one of the things I am responsible for will be in this director seat is like the budget, right? We took our AWS costs, as we mentioned earlier, from like $5,000 down to like, we spend like $1,000 now on everything. To do this on PubNub direct with the way we set it up, we're talking like maybe $700 a month. So if we're like going out for like a whole year of costs, like we're talking thousands and thousands just to have this rolled into an app that's more convenient for everybody. The challenges along the way are difficult, but it's, it's worth it. And for anybody who's going to build their own, definitely listen to the concerns I brought up earlier. You will save yourself a ton of time. Like it's, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Sure.
Nice. I want to say they were making Campfire open source. It's like not open contribution, but it's source open. It'd be kind of curious to see how they were maybe handling some of the front end stuff. Yeah, cool. And I actually want to say I had even heard of another kind of Slack-ish competitor recently that's open source.
Yeah.
And is it like Hooli or something?
Hooli? No. Stay away from that.
Why? What's up with that? Inform me.
That's the Google in Silicon Valley.
Huh?
The show Silicon Valley.
Okay.
The HBO show.
Uh-huh.
They have a bad guy company, and it's basically like their Google. It's called Hooli. Hooli.
Okay.
I'm not.
What does that have to do with the
all.
real Hooli? Are you trying to make a joke here that's I'm just not ringing with?
Yes, that's exactly what's happening here. You're...
Okay. I now understand. Okay, so for the real Hooli though, is it not good or not?
Don't know. Haven't looked into it.
Okay. Never mind. Just curious. I was mainly asking you, Jayson, because I was hoping you had researched some of these things that I'm also curious about, and so you could relay your information to me.
Yeah, we looked at like all of them, including Mattermost. And we just kind of felt for our case. Also, too, like, I like despite the challenges that we've ran into, like this was still all like built in like the last quarter. So, despite all this friction and stuff like that, I think it's well worth to have it directly integrated in our app for like scale in return on our actual like investment here into that desktop product. So we did look at all of these other ones, and we're just like, like they didn't feel like a good fit.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, to your point earlier, I mean, you're saving thousands of dollars a month. If you're paying $10,000 a month in Slack, it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround to get your ROI back for building that.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
$10,000 a month is $120,000 a year. That's insane.
To be honest,
you could pay
Jayson,
another debt for that.
Just throwing this out there, like this is really interesting to me. This isn't something that I hear about or come across frequently, and some of the stuff that you guys were just describing is like a pretty cheeky way of handling some of it. That's really cool. Maybe if you guys really iron some of this out, it would make for an awesome Laracon talk. So you should consider wrapping this up and pitching
I
that,
would
'cause
love
I would
to-
personally be super interested to hear more about it.
I would love to get up on stage and yap about Tauri. And I'm not like a super amazing Rust dev, but this was like Tauri was the thing that kicked this off because it checks all the boxes. So we're serving people in the Philippines. I can't ask them to download 200 megabyte packages. Like, you know, granted, the internet, since I've been at this company for 10 years now, right? I don't move around a lot. I immediately went from computer repair to like this place and started solving problems, and now it's 10 years later and my problems just keep getting more complicated. But since I started here, like the internet infrastructure over there has improved drastically, but still we're so sensitive to it because this is not only a product that they're required to run. We want it to be as out of the way as possible and as efficient as possible. And Tauri is like the key to making that happen. The packages are small, they're focused, performant, and it's just been a pleasure to actually develop on. So once you kind of get into like the Rust mindset about how to like do the things you need to do natively, or even if you don't, even if you're just shipping a binary so that way they can open a web app in the binary, it doesn't matter. It's still a better pick for like 99% of use cases. So I would love to just get up there and yap about like, here's the challenges we ran into with it. Here's how we did it. Here's how we deployed it out to everybody, because it's been, the team over there has done such a great job. And also their Discord support channel is always active. And there's a guy in there, Lucas, and he is always on top of stuff. If I don't like know something, I'll just put it in there. I guarantee no matter what day of the week it is, like within a couple hours, he'll have an answer. He'll just be like, oh yeah, I answered this 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, and link to the exact thread. And that guy's awesome. And I think he's part of like the Crab Nebula like main team now. So
join Tauri Discord.
Yeah, 100%. They're awesome over there. But yeah, if anybody's
for those of you who are listening to this, for those of you who are listening to this audio only, I picked up a notebook and wrote. That's why Steven's laughing.
And two, if you're an Electron, and you like, if you're an Electron, you're like, I think we need to maybe move to this app in the future. Again, just consider the point about the differences with WebKit. If you're comfortable kind of approaching both and tackling both, then it's a fantastic move. For us, it freed up a lot of application complexity because we were doing this crazy IPC second window thing. And two, just overhead for the machines that we're running on. You know, the specs of computers over there are not the best. We have to be really respectful of our workers' resources, their system resources. And, you know, when we had our Electron app, sometimes it would get kind of heavy. Like it would go do some big cycle, right? So we have like a couple features in there for tracking. Like we take obfuscated screenshots. So we take like a screenshot if they have that feature on, and we jumble it a lot, so we can't tell what it is. You can get a vague idea. You can be like, okay, that's obviously YouTube, but you can't tell what's going on. And, you know, that process over on Electron Lane was just so heavy. And we're like, we can't be doing this on these people's machines. Like, this is not free. We do it now. This thing is like so insignificant, so quick about it. It's amazing.
So for people who don't have the context, Electron weighs like 120 megs just spinning up the app, and Tauri is like 7 megs.
Yeah, I mean, isn't Electron like basically running an instance of Chrome?
Yeah, it is essentially.
Yeah. So
it's
it's
Chrome
Chromium
is
not the most lightweight thing ever, right? So,
and people have made very beautiful apps. Despite the challenges of working in Electron, they've made some really wonderful apps. And I definitely don't want to be like, you know, hey, your app's, you know, you need to pick it up and move. But for people that are looking to, you know, kind of get through the pain or get through the transition a little earlier, because I really do believe Tauri will be the future. for all of these, especially because they have like a mobile stack now that they're working on, and like that's like I think it's production ready. I really think this is going to be
2.0.
at the forefront. I
Yeah.
haven't played with the mobile at all because we ported our one app to 2, but yeah, just fantastic product.
Cool. So I'm really excited to have had Jayson on the show because I was talking to my boss Nick yesterday, and we were talking about like things that we going forward with mobile. Like we wanted to have a couple of different options, and I actually pitched going with Tauri 2.0. And it's awesome to have Jayson's experience coming on the show. And then I know like Nick listens to the show probably while he's trying to go to sleep at night, but whatever. So him being able to hear somebody else's experience in working with Tauri and how nice of an experience it's been is always a win. But as somebody who's getting excited about getting into mobile and desktop native like experiences, I'm excited to hear that it's not the end of the world of an experience.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I've done only a little bit of mobile. I've played and tinkered with React Native, and it's just not like for me at all. I couldn't really. It was Expo, so I'm really hoping that like from like the development side of things that they nail it, because I know they definitely have the talent to do so. And then hopefully with that, like we'll be able to ship this same app to phones, because that's kind of like the next frontier, right? We have chat, we have like this desktop app that's running that has these mobile connections. So it'd be nice to start that as maybe like a 2026 sort of thing, where we can then connect to these devices and people can chat with their teams and stuff like that at mod using their actual phone. So hoping that's in the future.
That's awesome. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up because we're at over an hour. But there is a couple of rapid fire questions we like asking just to kind of see where you're at, who you are. What do you do outside of writing code?
I am just addicted to like survival games. I'm a huge Project Zomboid, Rimworld Kenshi fan. I have just hundreds of hours of doing that in Steam. My wife says, you're always working so hard and your job sounds really stressful. And then the way that you unwind is by playing like the most stressful game I've ever seen. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Yeah.
So
Nice.
I made the mistake of getting my wife into 7 Days to Die, and now she just looks forward to Blood Moon. So I'm like, what is wrong with you?
I'm surprised they
for those
actually
of you
got
who
that
don't know,
released.
I'm surprised. That's crazy. For those of you who don't know, it's been in alpha for like 12 years, quite literally. They just released it this year. But the premise of the game is that you wake up, you have no resources, you have, a pair of cloth pants. That's it. And your goal is to build a base, because every 7 days you're going to have a blood moon, which is a bunch of zombies coming at you. And if you don't have a place to hold up, you're going to die a lot.
You should get your wife to play Zomboid. Just tell her it's like a spicy version of The Sims. Because it kind of is, like, in a way. It's the same isometric. You can build a house, you can decorate your house. It's a lot of fun. It just has a few things to consider.
I was watching Let's Game It Out. I was watching Josh from Let's Game It Out play that game, and he was trying to go out of his way to find like the worst way to play the game. And so that's a fun game to watch. If you ever get bored, just go to YouTube and type in Let's Game It Out, Project Zomboid, and watch him try to beat the game in the worst way possible.
I recall Aaron from Game Grumps also gave it a try, and he was so like upset, but also you could tell he was kind of interested. And so I was hoping he'd come back and revisit it. He hasn't so far, but I'm still holding out hope.
For sure. All right. Do you have any final tips for people who may be getting into coding?
I would say the big thing for anything in tech right now, there's a lot more resources than when I started, right? I started just breaking my computer. That's how I did my thing. You don't have to do that. You can skip all that. You have Jeffrey Way with Laracasts. You have all these courses, these amazing like instructors. I like Aaron Francis has like a couple courses now too. They are just good at teaching. I'd say start there. And that's why I like the Laravel community in general, is just following the community. You get to see all these cool things that are happening. People are tweeting about what they're working on. You have just these projects kind of surfacing. You have courses surfacing all the time that have like a ton of amazing information. There's also books about going to production, like Battle Ready Laravel. All of these things are amazing and stuff that I wish I had, or at least maybe known about sooner when I started. Because, like, again, to speak back to that friction when I first started PHP in general, I was like, how does this work? Nobody explained this to me. All that stuff's so available now at like your fingertips that I would just lean into it. Get a Laracast subscription for Christmas and just go in there.
Black Friday deal. It's 50% off right now.
That's awesome.
I'm not being paid to say that, but
right. Maybe
Jeffrey,
he'll have to sponsor the podcast now, right?
I was gonna say, Jeffrey, get your people to call my people. My people's Steven. Just call Steven.
Yeah, I think that's how I found Laravel too. Is I was looking for an alternative because I was like, I don't like this. This feels wrong. And I kind of stumbled upon Laravel after kind of working my way through like a Symfony and like what was it called, Cake PHP or something like that.
Oh God.
Yeah, that. Yeah, we won't have to talk about that. But was super happy with just the caliber of what they're doing, and the tools built into it. So like I gotta say, like, even if you're not doing Laravel, there's a lot out there just surfacing from the Laravel community that is just amazing. Everybody's doing this awesome stuff, and then you have me doing a little bit of everything.
Now I have one final question. What content creator do you just like, the second they post something, you hop on and you've got to see it right away? I know you've got one.
I am huge on Digital Foundry. That's not like a specific person as far as content creation, and that's not really tech. It's sort of tech related, but I'm really into like Digital Foundry's work. I just like the way I always watch their podcast, and also Skill Up. I also really like his stuff. So not necessarily coding, but coding adjacent. That's really, I don't watch too many people who do coding on YouTube in particular, but I am subscribed to like Aaron Francis's channel. Like he does post some stuff on YouTube sometimes, which is awesome. But yeah.
He is super quick too. Like some new technology comes out and it seems like an hour later he's got a YouTube video up on it, and you're like, what the heck? How is that physically possible?
Yeah, he's really something else. And it's cool. I'm just like this random person who knows about him. But yeah, if they're out there listening to this, the community at large who's kind of in the background definitely appreciates all the hard work he put in.
For sure. All right.
Well said.
I think that just about wraps this up for this week. Jayson, it's been absolutely awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sending me the email and asking to be on the show. For the record, you are the first and only person so far who has done that. Hoping to get a couple more because we don't want to get into episodes where it's just Karl and Steven talking to each other.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants it. So please, I guess we can have Jayson close us out. What was your experience like being on the show? Yeah. what was your experience, or what does it feel like being on the show? Just because I don't think I've ever asked that question to anybody that's been on the show.
I like it. It works for me. I feel like I kind of meandered a bit, and so like now I'm thinking about like the poor Spotify listing where it tries to like put like little timestamps on every single topic. They're all going to be just drastically different. So sorry that's my bad. We everything gets derailed, but Yeah, I enjoyed being here. And I'd love to be on here again. Maybe if it's not in this format, maybe just maybe a specific focused show about maybe Tauri or another piece of tech that I've used. That would be amazing. But yeah, it's been great talking to you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you guys later. Bye.
Okay.